this up.
Okay, so voters tend to elect candidates whose visual image most evokes positive feelings. Thus, law designed to increase the fairness of elections should not allow one candidate to buy significantly more media exposure than any rival candidate can afford.
All right, so what is our conclusion here?
That laws designed to increase the fairness of elections should not allow one candidate to buy significantly more media exposure than Ryan rival.
Yeah, we shouldn't allow them to buy more than someone else because voters tend to elect those whose visual image evokes positive feelings. All right, so why do we know that this is a necessary assumption question?
I guess because.
What word in the stimulus?
Oh, sorry. I was like literally thinking that it's just the assumption in the
assumption. And what other word? Because like it could be, how do we know it's necessary and not sufficient?
If it says if, like
if would make it a sufficient. What word here makes this one necessary?
Depends. Argument
Yes,
depends on
depends.
it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Depends, requires, and relies are necessary indicator words. All right.
Yeah.
So I think of necessary as, since it starts with NE, I think of like what is the bare minimum needed in order for our argument to be true.
Mm-hmm.
So without it, the argument falls apart. But we tend, since this is like a bottom or a top down question, we tend to want more mild answer choices. Whereas this is different than sufficient, right? Because sufficient, we want to bring something in that guarantees that conclusion. Where necessary, it's like, what's the bare minimum needed? And so let's go ahead and read A.
Okay, so elections are unfair only if at least one of the candidates have more resources than any rival candidate has.
Is that needed?
I don't think so, because it says at least one, right? At least one of the candidates has.
Yeah, and what this is saying is like elections are unfair only if. So if elections are unfair, that means that one candidate has more resources than the other. Like, no, that doesn't need to be true in order for the idea that these laws should not be allowed or whatever. So we can cross that one off. All right, what about B?
People will have positive feelings towards election candidates only when they find candidates' visual, image is familiar. Visual image is familiar. I don't think like the visual images. Oh, I guess familiar. More media exposure than any rival.
That's the only time it happens.
No, it's not. It couldn't be the only time.
Excellent. All right, so that doesn't need to be true in order for our conclusion to be true.
Yeah.
Okay. What about next?
So the tendency of a candidate's visual image to evoke positive feelings in a voter at least sometimes increases as media exposure increases. This is right.
Why?
Because, I mean, it says at least sometimes increases as media exposure increases.
At least we need it must be true, or it's needed to be true that this happens at least sometimes, because without this, it would destroy our conclusion.
Yeah.
All right, what about D?
So candidates invariably buy as much media exposure as they can afford, and no, that's not needed.
Yeah. Okay.
And any candidate whose visual image does not evoke many positive feelings in voters will not be elected. That's
not either. Excellent. That's our answer C.
Yeah.